Here we go. This is my last attempt. Second attempt from the patio. I had 3 attempts from the upper pond. If this video doesn't make any sense, I'm going to call it a day, go inside and watch Moby Dick. Probably. It's been a morning that started off poorly. I dropped my glasses in the upper fish pond and had to fish them out, pun intended. And it hasn't gotten better since. It just keeps getting worse. I took the video I made up there in and I realized the whole thing was terribly out of focus. And I thought, no, I can't really put that out. So I came out to take another one and it was raining. And so I set the camera up where it is now. And the first video that I did here, about 10 minutes worth of video, was perhaps in focus, but it was just gibberish and garbage. So I started this one and lo and behold it's quit raining, but there are some serious clouds above us, which is why there's such nice contrast in this picture. And I'm just going to stay where I am and let it go. Now yesterday Myra made a point that was valid. My videos are longer than most people are willing to sit through, unless they find it fascinating. And it's been a long time since I've been fascinating, if I ever was. So yeah, I think she's probably right. My videos are way too long. I would imagine your average attention span nowadays is the length of a music video. Or perhaps the time span between 2 commercial blocks on a television, which is somewhere between 5 and 8 minutes. So yeah, my videos that go towards 20 are certainly too long for your average person. On the other hand, which in my case would be the left hand because I'm ambidextrous, I'm more to the left than to the right. I don't do these videos so much for the other person. I do these videos as a exercise in cleansing my memories and my inner demons and remembering good times from times gone by. I do it for me. And now, I hope you enjoy it, don't get me wrong, and I am thrilled when somebody does. But mostly I do this for me. I am in the winter of my life. I be 71 in about 2 months. Already lived longer than I thought I would. And if I'm lucky, maybe another 10 years. If I'm not lucky, maybe another 10 seconds. It all depends when the heart decides to stop, I suppose. And I would like to get whatever understanding I have developed over the years out and encapsulated and try to set it up so I know what I feel and what I've done, which is what these are about. The memories from the village, the stories, the time as a lighthouse keeper or a deckhand on a mission boat, time of a drunken biker, commercial pilot when I was a flight instructor, cab driver, I was good at that. A lot of things that some I was good at and some I wasn't. I was a lousy military person. I lasted 6 months in the Canadian Air Force. I was going to become an MP, military police. But I couldn't handle the discipline or being that much of a unit. I was too much of a too much of a lone wolf, too much of an individual, too much of not a team player. Probably all sorts of reasons there, but I didn't last long. Uh, One day at inspection, it was Friday and I was looking forward to getting off base with my buddy and go do some weird and wonderful things. And the corporal decided that my kit was a mess and I didn't deserve a weekend pass. And I guess he saw me staring at the bayonet and he backed out and came back a minute or two later with a couple of guys with rifles and their bayonets on the rifles. They marched me off to the jail. Later that day I was in front of the commanding officer and I was given a choice. I could do 3 to 5 in Valcartier, the military prison, or I could take an honorable discharge and get out. And it took me, 2, maybe 3/10 of a second and said, "I get out, sir, if it's all right with you." And that was my experience in the military. It did not work well. I was not mentally equipped for that type of life, which is all right. I was equipped to be a good lighthouse keeper and not a bad deckhand. And I was a good minister in training in the village. There were things I was good at in my life. I'm not bragging. It's just a fact. Some things I did well, some things I did poorly. I could never tune my dual carbs up properly on my English motorcycles. And points were a mystery that took me a while to solve. The dual point setup in a 650cc or 500cc Triumph was strange to me. Luckily I had friends, particularly in the name of Rick, you've heard of him, who would do a lot of the tuning up for me. I wasn't very good at that. I could sure drink as a young person though, but that wasn't a very good thing to do. And I keep going back to the village. It was such a crucial time in my life. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to be trained in a mentoring position by a mentor. And if you have, you know how good it is. Imagine how good it is if you've got an entire village mentoring you. 600 people in the village, and it started off that nobody was really training me in the village. There were too many things against it. I was white. I was the church person. I was someone who they had been taught to respect and show deference to and accept the fact that they knew more about being a minister than the people of the village did. And suddenly they had agreed to train a white man. This was hard for them to do. And the training that was supposed to be done, my supervisors were a ministerial team, husband and wife, who shall remain nameless, who had never worked or lived in an Indian village, who knew nothing about village ministry, and they were going to supervise me to be a village minister. This was doomed to failure, and it did fail. And the greater church was going to shut everything down, and then the people in the village said, "No, not a good idea. We like Brian. We think he's got potential, and we'll be the supervisor. We've had a church for 100 years. We know what we're doing." And they stood up and said, "This is how it's going to be." And the greater church said, "Fair enough. Have a go at it. We'll see what happens." And it went well. They trained me, they taught me, they took me into their homes, their lives, their hearts. And I, in whatever small way I could, returned the love and the openness and the willingness to be a part of this great experiment. And we did some tremendous things. We started rituals that had never been done for decades. We went so far, and as far as I know, we are the first, if not the only. It may have happened since I left it in another village, I don't know. But at one point, a local master carver, Robert Stewart, decided that he wanted to do something to make a statement about the Ulican fish in Kimano. Now, the Ulican fish was the first fresh food of the year, traditionally, and if you got a good Ulican run, you had fish and food for the whole year. You would not starve if you had a good Ulican run. You might get a little tired of what you got, but you wouldn't starve. So it was important. Now, the Ulican is a very finicky fish. If the least thing is wrong with its spawning area, it won't spawn. And Alcan had built a massive underground hydro plant to get electricity into Kitimat for the aluminum factory production line. And it was ruining the Ulican run and the spawning grounds. So Bobby decided he would create a full-size totem that honored the Ulican fish and the animals and the people that depended upon it. And they would take it to the Kamano from Kitimat. Ooh, I put the name in. Wasn't supposed to do that. Sorry about that, folks. And they'd raise it, and it'd be a grand ceremony, and it would be a good time and a good thing. And the totem took, this is not, unlike the movies, this doesn't happen in 22 seconds. This took months to carve. It was a beautiful pole. People were working on it constantly, and it ended up gorgeous. And it was important. The village thought it was important. United Church people thought it was important. Pentecostals thought it was important. Traditionalists thought it was important. Mormons did. We had them all in the village. And I put forward the idea. I asked the church council, well, can we bring it in the church? It'd fit down the aisleway between the pews, but it would fit in the church. And could we bless it? Could the elders come in, village elders and church elders, and bless this pole before they take it out? And they looked at me and said, we could do that? Because remember, these were people whose grandparents and parents had been taken away to, and some of these people too, had the residential schools. The village had lived through a time of outlawing the potlatch when you couldn't have traditional garb, when you couldn't speak your language, and now there was a minister in training with the blessing of the United Church, Greater United Church, saying, let's, if you want to, we'll bring the pole in and bless it. How does that sound to you? And they thought it sounded pretty darn good. So, we talked to Bobby, and we talked to other people in the village, and the village talked, and the village said, fair enough, let's do this. And we took the totem pole in, and I guess I had been in the village a couple of years then. And it had gotten to the point when I saw a stranger come into the village and say, who's the white man? I had forgotten that in many ways I was still white. I had been taken into the culture, I was being trained. They were morphing me into the ideal Indian pastor. minister. That was their intent, and it was working. But when they brought the pole into the church, suddenly, I mean, I was not standing in the pew making the big sermon and this and that and the other thing. This was not my function had simply been to suggest. And they said yes, and I gave the stamp of approval from the United Church of Canada. But they brought the pole in, the people gathered in the church, and they slowly, one by one or in small groups, they would go up and they'd touch the pole. They would pray with it, they would pray over it, they'd pray beside it, whatever you want to call it. They'd sit down, they'd talk, and they'd murmur, and they would go out, and others would come in, and I knew in the bottom of my heart and soul that they were in a place I could never go. They had a spot in them that I had no idea of, that was nowhere in my psyche, in my makeup. I have never in my life felt so much a stranger. Now, they weren't mean or nasty to me. I don't mean to say that. They loved me, and they respected me, and they treated me like a rather large child most of the time. But I was not a part of what they were going through. I never could be, I never will be. All I could do was stand in the background and just absorb what I could of their emotions. And from the church it went to the seine boat, big fishing boat. They put it on the fish boat, and the Thomas Crosby was there. The church officials were going to go. And there was a flotilla of boats going from the village to Camano, and we got off and raised the pole. Marvelous time. Mostly, again, I wasn't the one doing the blessing or the praying. I was just doing the watching and absorbing, and it was a grand thing to be a part of, even in such a minuscule way. The totem pole in the village, in the United Church, and the way the people felt about it. Incredible. They were in a place that I'm sure was very remarkable. I have no idea where it was. I can only imagine. I can't describe it because I don't know it. All I know is I couldn't get there. And I know one other thing. I am beyond description joyful that I was able to help them have that moment. If I hadn't made the suggestion, they would not have thought of it, I don't think. They might have, but I don't think they would have. It was drilled into them that there was a direct separation between the old ways and the church ways. And you kept them separate. You did not bring regalia into the church. You did not do any of the potlatching or the big time ceremonies in the church, although it was a meeting hall in the basement. That was done in the rec center. And yet this time they brought the pole into the church, and it became a unique and different place at that point. I don't know what happened afterwards. I heard some rumors, but rumors are terrible to spread. I do know that when I tried to get hold of people in the greater church and find out what was going on, because I'd heard some bad rumors, nobody got back to me. Anyway, it was a great time with the poll. 20 minutes, it's time to shut this off. I hope you enjoyed that story, and I hope that I'll have the chance to talk to you tomorrow. And that's all for now. Bye-bye.